Hello, I'm Vince Rubino, a bankruptcy attorney practicing in northeastern Pennsylvania, the Lehigh Valley, and surrounding counties, and I would like to discuss credit counseling as it relates to a bankruptcy filing. Credit counseling suggests a person or agency that can provide advice regarding credit or debt, and in fact, there are agencies, many of them nonprofit, which do just that. Often a debt repayment plan is formulated, particularly if the debt is from credit cards, as opposed to medical bills, personal loans, or card possessions. In my experience, the best debt repayment plans are formulated by nonprofit agencies which help reduce credit card interest and negotiate with creditors to permit the debts to be paid out over time, usually around 5 years. Beware of out-of-state or internet-based companies which promise they can settle your debts for less than the amounts owed. I can't count the number of clients I've had over the years who entered into a debt settlement plan and invested thousands of dollars in payments to the company claiming to be settling their debts, only to be sued by one or more of the debts they thought was being resolved. If you're considering a debt repayment plan to help manage your debt, and there are certainly times when resolving debts with the assistance of a third party would be appropriate, I urge you to check references and reviews, how long the company or agency has been around, and find a bona fide nonprofit agency. If possible, go local. Now, credit counseling, when it pertains to bankruptcy, is a different animal. If someone who has primarily consumer debts, such as credit cards, medical bills, and the like, needs to file for bankruptcy, he or she is required first to undergo pre-bankruptcy credit counseling. Pre-bankruptcy credit counseling is different from the type of credit counseling which results in a debt repayment plan and does not involve restructuring debt. Rather, it is intended by the law to educate those considering a bankruptcy filing to ensure that they have weighed other options, including a debt repayment plan, before the bankruptcy is filed. The counseling may be done in person or on the telephone, but is most often accomplished over the internet, which is usually the least expensive. The counseling can also be accomplished in most any language. The duration of the counseling session can vary depending upon how well the person understands the information being presented, but for internet counseling, I usually suggest that my clients set aside about 2 hours. I also suggest that they have handy some recent pay stubs, a list of the debts to be included in the bankruptcy, and a summary of their monthly household expenses, which information might help expedite the counseling session. When the law says that the counseling requirement must be fulfilled before someone can file for bankruptcy, it isn't kidding. There is court case after court case involving debtors who for some reason or another did not undergo the counseling session prior to their bankruptcy filing. And time after time the courts have held that wind, rain, tornado, and childbirth did not excuse the pre-bankruptcy credit counseling requirement, nor will they excuse the second counseling requirement. After the bankruptcy petition is filed, debtors must undergo a debt management course in order for them to be issued a discharge of their debts. Whereas the initial pre-bankruptcy course is intended to ensure that bankruptcy is appropriate under the circumstances, the second course is intended to educate the debtor with respect to managing debts and finances in hopes of avoiding future credit problems. Nobody plans on being in a position to have to file for bankruptcy, and certainly no one wants to need to do it for a second time. Budgeting is ordinarily addressed along with a lesson on how and why to avoid amassing credit card debt in the future. The debt management course must be accomplished in between the date of the filing of the bankruptcy petition and the date the case is closed. If the debtor does not undergo the debt management course prior to the closing of the case, he or she will not receive a discharge order and will remain responsible for those debts which could otherwise have been eliminated in the bankruptcy. The cost of the two counseling sessions can be as much as around $60 or so for in-person counseling, but can be considerably less if accomplished online, usually around $25. Married couples filing a joint case are charged only a single fee by many counseling agencies. We always instruct our clients when it's time to do the first credit counseling session and the second credit counseling session, and provide options for the counseling agency to use. Dozens of agencies can be found on the internet, many of which send solicitations to attorneys across the country. Your attorney might suggest or recommend a counseling agency with which he or she feels comfortable with for one reason or another. I hope you got the information you needed regarding credit counseling and debt management courses. Thank you for listening.